Good afternoon, folks. This is Paul Cundiff of Woody's Restorations. Woody's Restorations has three divisions. One, we restore antique and classic wooden boats like the ones that you may see if you pans around while I'm talking. This 21-foot Capri, for example, and gosh, we got a Silver Arrow and we got a 22-foot Sportsman inside here. So in our barn tent, and we have 6 more boats that way. That's one thing that we do. We also own Rayco tanks. We purchased that about 4 or 5 years ago, Rayco Tanks has been in business catering to the needs of the antique and classic boating enthusiasts since 1983. And we also do custom canvas and vinyl. But what I want to do is talk about tanks a little bit. I see occasionally some posts about tanks on various websites, and there are some things that sometimes concern me when I see some of the posts. Recently I saw a post about a tank that has some tabs for mounting on it, and the preferred mounting method of Century, Lyman, and Chris-Craft, the preferred securing method, has been straps for, since almost the beginning of time with these boat companies. So 60 years, most certainly, probably closer to 80 years, that the straps have been the preferred method for mounting a tank. So the reason I bring this up is when a person puts tabs on the tank, if the tabs aren't in the right place and built the right way, the tank can inadvertently and accidentally become a structural member of the boat. Now, for example, fastening a tank to two engine stringers is really kind of a no-no, because those 2 engine stringers, we all know our boats are flexible. We all know that all boats are flexible, and one of the things about wooden boats and their great ride is that wooden boats are extremely flexible. So any movement, these are 2 engine stringers. Any movement that's where there's movement of one stringer relative to the other stringer is going to, if the tank is attached to the stringers with mounting tabs, we're going to end up with that tank flexing every time the boat flexes. And that metal will fatigue in the tanks. That metal will fatigue just like a paperclip in a bad meeting, which we've all been in bad meetings, and we fool with the paperclip, moving it back and forth until finally it breaks. So that's work hardening, and that's what will happen at the welds on the tanks that have tabs. So when someone asks us, when we receive a call and someone's asking about tabs on a tank, we have all kinds of alarm bells, red flags, sirens, all kinds of crazy things happen in our office. The red flags go up. We're very concerned, and we want to make sure that these tanks are loosely mounted and that there's no way the tank can become a structural member intentionally or unintentionally of the boat, because that's absolutely forbidden by the ABYC and by the Coast Guard. So while the tank manufacturer has no responsibility, no legal responsibility as to how these tanks are mounted, we do feel like we've got a moral responsibility when we see something that concerns us to point it out and let people make the proper decisions with the proper information. So mounting tabs, the thing about mounting tabs is you can devise all sorts of ways of mounting with mounting tabs where you think that you're not introducing stresses to your tank. But why not do it the way it's been done for the last 80 years and not worry about why re-engineer the wheel? Because for 80 years they've been strapped down, and that's the reason why, is so that they cannot possibly, under any circumstance, by any chance of freak of nature, become a structural member of the boat accidentally or inadvertently. And again, it's a requirement that it can't be a structural member of the tank. You can't do it on purpose, but it can happen accidentally. And I see some tabs where, and recently saw some where I think it's a concern. The second thing I want to talk about was anti-siphons. In the same picture, I saw a new fuel dip tube. And what I want to show is that if your dip tube has no way to stop a siphon, then once the siphon is started by the fuel pump on an engine, all connections, like to the fuel pump, to the fuel pump, from the fuel pump, at the carburetor, all connections that are lower than the fuel level in the tank will result, if they leak, then the siphon will continue. They'll continue to leak while that boat's sitting in your garage, and while you're taking it down the road, until the fuel level in the tank comes down to the level of the leak. So what Chris-Craft did, and actually Century did, they all did. They all had a method of anti-siphon. Chris-Craft, for example, used a carburetor jet in the fuel pickup. We say, well, that's sucking air. If I'm sucking air, I'm not going to be sucking fuel. You're sucking some air, just like when you're sucking Coca-Cola out of the straw at McDonald's that's got a hole in it. You're sucking some air, but you're predominantly getting fuel, and your air is vented out of the system at your carburetor. So this is how Chris-Craft, by virtue of having this this air fitting, this jet inside the tank, here's your tank fitting. So this jet was inside the tank. It would suck some air, and when the fuel pump stopped pumping, air would enter through here, and the fuel would drop back down out of the fill pipe, of your siphon pipe. So that's what keeps. This is a safety feature, and it's a very important safety feature. All tanks have to be mounted with some type of anti-siphon device. Now, so I saw a dip tube recently in a picture, no anti-siphon device. Now, that's not the end of the world. We don't have to do it the way the old timers did it with an air jet. There is a product called an anti-siphon valve, and it is a simple one-way valve. It's actually a spring-loaded check valve, and it will actually, the suction on the fuel pump has to overcome the spring, and it opens the spring, and then the spring would shut when you're not pulling fuel. And it can be used in combination with a shut-off valve. And so the other thing I did notice on that picture was a lot of dissimilar metals: copper in a bronze fitting, and soldered in a bronze fitting, and then of course going down in an aluminum tank. So if you're concerned about dissimilar metals, you can buy all aluminum for your fittings. You can, and matter of fact, instead of copper, we use a nitrile dip tube, nylon or nitrile, I can't remember which, but obviously it's made for fuel, so it's, but we use this. And I've taken these out of tanks that are 10, 15, 20 years old ones that are still in good shape. Anti-siphon valve, cutoff valve, and those can be in either order. And then barb or whatever your fitting is to go to your line, whether you're using copper line or whether you're using rubber hose. So, so just if you're concerned about that, these are available. The other thing that I did note is a fill spout. Your fill spouts are kind of interesting. Your one end is sometimes National Pipe Tapered, NPT. Doesn't stand for National Pipe Thread. NPT stands for National Pipe Tapered. So this one actually looks like a straight thread on here, but sometimes these are tapered. It doesn't really matter on this end whether they're tapered or whether they're straight. That's your gas cap end. The other end, the threads are straight. NPS, National Pipe Straight. So the threads are straight, and the reason for that is all of these boats. We come on over here. All these boats, you know, they were built by hand. They were assembled by hand. They were parts were cut out with machines, but they were assembled by hand. So, and all the tanks were, of course, assembled by hand. So the height of the fill cap over the deck can be adjusted by how deep. That's interesting, but can be adjusted by how deep you put these threads into your tank. That's why they're straight. They're not tapered. If they're tapered, they're going to come to a halt because you've got a tapered hole and you're putting a tapered pipe in a tapered hole, and it'll come to a stop. And what you'll have if you don't have straight threads down here, you're going to get very frustrated trying to get this down in the tank and get it the right height. So that's really not so much a safety thing as it is a time-saving thing and an aggravation-saving thing when you are installing your tanks. The last thing is I saw a tank that appeared to be for a Century boat. It was a rectangular tank, the tank being flat. The manufacturer of the boat has a responsibility that when the tank is installed, that the top of the tank won't accumulate water, that water can't set on it. So the way Lyman solved that problem is they build oval tanks. The way Chris-Craft solved it is they build round tanks. And the way Century solved it is they build a trapezoid tank. So that when the boat was setting level, the top of the tank was automatically at a slant and could not hold water. So and that is a Coast Guard and ABYC requirement. In fact, if you look at the ABYC, which is American Boat Yacht Council information on tanks, you'll find that they closely match the Coast Guard, and vice versa. The Coast Guard actually refers you to some ABYC standards. So at any rate, those were some things I was concerned about. We here at RACO think that because we restore boats, that we can offer some more information and to make your installation in your boat safer. So from that standpoint, I mean, anybody can build you a tank, anybody can build you a Coast Guard approved tank based on your dimensions and your specifications. However, these boats were engineered by experts. The proof is in the pudding that they did it right. And so when I see re-engineering of the tanks, I get concerned. And again, I've got no legal responsibility, but I do feel like we've got a moral responsibility when we see something that doesn't look exactly right to us, to make sure that people understand. So because we restore boats and we install these, we have a little more knowledge about what the tank needs to do, what needs to be done with the tank after we produce it and after it goes out our door. So hopefully that was helpful to you. Hopefully that can help keep you safe in the coming boating seasons. And if in any way, shape, or form we can help you, feel free to call us. Thank you.